In the depths of the old archaeology museum, David Smith sighed heavily. He was a man who had spent most of his life immersed in history and archaeological excavations. Solidly built, with a keen gaze that reflected deep knowledge of the past, David was a professional and passionate about his work. However, despite his expertise and enthusiasm, the past few years had seen David leading a dull and monotonous life. His youth, spent in constant travels and archaeological expeditions, had not allowed him to start a family or find a lasting attachment. Now he lived alone, studying artifacts and honing his knowledge, but feeling that something was slipping away from him. One day, as he delved into his thoughts while sitting at his desk in the quiet setting of the museum office, his phone vibrated and emitted a short sound, an unexpected message interrupting his attention. David was far from popular, and his phone rarely rang, except when creditors remembered him. A message appeared on the screen. It was from his old friend, Richard Blake, with whom he had once shared a passion for excavations. David shuddered, recalling long-forgotten times and the adrenaline they felt while exploring ancient mysteries. As soon as David read the message, his heart began to race, as if his old passion for adventure had been reignited. He stared at the screen for a long time, reminiscing about past excavations, fascinating discoveries, and the dangerous adventures he and his friend had experienced. Nostalgia overwhelmed him, filling him with an energy he had long been missing. The message contained an invitation to go to the Amazon in search of a lost tribe that no one remembered anymore. Suddenly invigorated by the possibility of tasting adventure once again, David felt his heart beat faster, and the fire of exploration ignited in his soul. For David, this invitation was more than just a trip to the Amazon. It was a chance to return to what he loved so much, to a life full of adventures and unexpected discoveries. He felt that this might be his last chance to experience a true adventure before life took that opportunity away from him. The decision was made quickly. David typed a reply, accepting his friend's invitation. Joy and excitement resonated in his chest, for he knew that the upcoming journey would bring back what he had been missing: danger, the thrill of discovery, and perhaps new friends. After accepting Richard's invitation, David spent the rest of the evening immersed in memories of his past adventures. He flipped through old photographs from excavations, recalling every moment: the laughter and joy in good company, the excitement before unknown mysteries, and the danger that awaited them at every turn. Old maps and records stirred feelings of excitement and a thirst for exploration in him. David reminisced about his first excavations when every find felt like a treasure, and each discovery awakened new ambitions and passions within him. At the same time, he envisioned the upcoming adventure in the Amazon. Images of dense jungles, uncharted rivers, and ancient ruins already formed in his imagination. He anticipated new discoveries and hoped to encounter new friends and opportunities. Thus, David spent the rest of the evening immersed in his memories and dreams of the new adventure that awaited him in the Amazon. Weeks passed, but there was no response from Richard. Despite his doubts and anticipation, David hesitated to call. He knew that, when the time came, Richard would show up at his doorstep, just as he had before, with a goofy grin on his face and the usual words, "Well, let's go, my friend." But the days continued to drag on, and Richard still did not appear. David began to doubt whether the plans were still in place. He wondered if they had changed or if Richard had simply forgotten about him. Perhaps archaeology was indeed such a slow-paced endeavor that everything was getting delayed indefinitely. David had almost begun to forget about the invitation to the Amazon when, one day, a well-dressed man arrived at the museum. He looked serious and determined, commanding attention with his appearance. This man was looking for David, and his arrival caused David some tension. When David met him, the man confidently introduced himself as Michael Johnson. He explained that they might not have met before, but he was representing Richard. David felt his heart quicken, bracing himself for bad news. Michael's appearance was impressive. A man around 50 with thick, tousled black hair, of slight stature but fit and energetic. The gray at his temples only added to his charm, and his quiet yet confident voice inspired trust. His attire was immaculate, emphasizing his influential demeanor. Michael Johnson apologized to David for the long wait and was ready to explain why the process had been delayed. He explained that he was a very influential and wealthy man, owning a network of printing presses that brought him substantial profits. Since childhood, he had been drawn to stories of various adventures, always dreaming of becoming a part of such escapades himself. When he met Richard and heard his captivating tales of excavations and expeditions, Michael immediately knew that this was what he had been waiting for. Having the means, he decided to sponsor the expedition by offering financial support to Richard. However, he set a condition. He wanted to participate in the expedition himself, to fully experience the atmosphere of adventure and personally uncover the mysteries of ancient civilizations. David found this proposition peculiar yet fitting. He pondered that another wealthy person with idle time might think he could afford such whims. However, he listened attentively. After a brief pause, Michael suddenly asks, "Well, are you ready to go? I can't hang around here all day." Michael's abrupt question startled David. He would argue that he couldn't just drop everything and leave. After all, it was still a workday for him. He hadn't taken any time off, and he hadn't packed. To which Michael replied, "Those issues are already taken care of. I spoke with your boss, Mr. Collins. He was very pleased to hear that you're going on the expedition, and he's also willing to donate a substantial amount to the museum's development. He wished you luck and said not to rush. As for your work, arrangements have been made. You'll receive your salary during the expedition, and we'll sort out your personal belongings along the way. The plane is waiting for us after all." David stood rooted to the spot, stunned. After a long moment of contemplation, he finally returned to his office. There, he quickly gathered the necessary documents and everything he might need for the trip. An hour later, they were already at the airport, where a private plane awaited them. David was excited. He had never participated in anything like this before. However, he was grateful for Michael's generosity, who spared no expense for such luxury. Michael announced that their next stop was Peru, where Richard would meet them. According to him, they would receive all necessary information upon arrival. During the entire flight, David was lost in thought while Michael remained silent. Upon landing at the airport, their belongings were quickly loaded into a car, and they set off in an unknown direction. Their journey led them to an open field resembling a runway for crop-dusting planes. There, amidst the grass, Richard greeted them with his usual grin and warm words. "Good to see you." Richard briefed David on his acquaintance with Michael, his proposal, and the expedition preparations. He explained that they were embarking on a great adventure and an equally important mission, to find the lost city of ancient civilizations. Over the next few days, they stayed at a camp, preparing for the expedition. With not much else to occupy himself, David joined the local guys in a game of soccer and observed as the locals efficiently transported all the necessities for the trek, like ants carrying their loads. The expedition consisted of a group of 15 people, most of whom carried provisions and equipment. They faced a significant rafting journey down the river, followed by a long trek through impenetrable jungles. It was a meticulously planned and well-equipped expedition, yet still fraught with dangers and surprises. The release date kept getting postponed due to heavy rains, a common occurrence in the area. Although the rainy season posed additional obstacles and risks, Richard was confident that the group was prepared for the challenge. After all, weather is not always predictable, and investigating ancient mysteries required flexibility and adaptability. Because Michael couldn't join the expedition earlier, the dates were shifted to coincide with the rainy season. Richard understood this but also knew that the funding came from Michael. Thus, despite changes in plans and departure dates, Richard and his team were ready for the new challenges they would face during the expedition. The evening gathered all expedition participants as the last rays of the setting sun painted the sky in shades of fire. Richard stood before them, his eyes gleaming with determination, and his words resonated convincingly. "Friends," he began, his voice sounding inspired and confident, "tomorrow our great hunt for secrets and mysteries will begin. This will be our chance to make our mark in history, to uncover something the world has never seen. We will venture into the heart of the jungle, where ancient treasures and secrets lie hidden beneath the dense canopy of vines and branches." He briefly outlined the expedition plan, describing the main stages of the journey and the research objectives. "We have the opportunity to be the first to unravel the mysteries of the lost city of ancient civilizations. This will be our glory, our legacy. But remember, only through collective effort, courage, and determination can we achieve success. Let us together create history." Richard's words sounded like a call to action, and the expedition members felt a growing sense of excitement and anticipation for the adventures that lay ahead. The next morning, bustling preparations began. The entire team gathered at the airstrip, where they awaited another short flight. The first to depart were the team members responsible for provisions and preparation. They were mostly locals who claimed to know the area like the backs of their hands, a claim we were willing to believe even though we knew it was a lie. After another flight, they landed in a place similar to before, on a stretch resembling a meadow but already devoid of signs of human activity. From here, their water expedition began, which was expected to take 3 days with all stops for rest. The team had everything necessary for swimming, and they were ready to set off to find the lost city of the ancients. Adventure wasted no time in making itself known. The first day of the rafting trip went smoothly. Everyone was still full of strength and determination. Michael opened a bottle and poured whiskey into Richard's and David's glasses, confidently stating, "Guys, I told you we'd make it," Michael said. Richard and David exchanged glances, realizing that more trials awaited them, and turned their gaze to Michael, who was clowning around and clearly pleased with himself. The night passed quietly, except for the strange sounds of the jungle and the incessant buzzing of mosquitoes that disturbed their peace. In the morning they gathered and set off on the second day of rafting, ready for new discoveries and adventures in the Amazon jungle. The second day of rafting turned out to be much more challenging than they expected. The team encountered a dangerous stretch where fast currents and rocks created many obstacles. They proceeded with caution, yet hoped to navigate this section without serious setbacks. Suddenly, a tragic accident occurred. Part of the team responsible for provisions hit rocks, causing the raft's side to tear open. The boat began to sink, and the strong current swept away the provisions, some sinking while the rest was carried downstream. Several team members were thrown into the water. Panic gripped the group as 3 of them disappeared into a whirlpool. The remaining team members tried to help their comrades, but the force of the current was too strong. Fear and helplessness overwhelmed them as they watched people vanish into the churning waters. Events unfolded swiftly, as if time had slowed down. Everyone in the team had been prepared for the possibility that something could go wrong in this dangerous stretch of the river. Yet, even with their preparations for the unexpected, they could not foresee the exact course of events. Each member of the team reacted instantly, trying to save themselves and their comrades. But the force of nature proved too great, and even experienced explorers were powerless against the might of the water. In that moment of unexpected danger, it was hard to believe their own eyes. Everything happened so quickly that the team could barely comprehend what was unfolding around them. By evening, as the sun began to set behind the horizon, they finally reached their campsite. Everything around them seemed grim and oppressive. Their spirits shattered like ancient shards of stone. They managed to partially dry off, but fatigue and depleted resources dragged their spirits into the depths of despair. Wet and weary, they silently gathered to assess the remaining provisions. The weary and grim faces expressed worry and concern. The inventory count was dismal. Much of what they needed had been lost under the force of the water, forcing them to reconsider their rations to survive going forward. But what was even more critical, they discovered that many of the medicines intended for trauma cases had been swept away by the river's currents. This added even more worry and concern, as the jungles held numerous dangers that could require medical intervention. Morning arrived with a heavy atmosphere, as if a blanket of adversity had settled over the entire group. Everyone moved about somberly, not speaking to each other. Only the locals whispered among themselves, clearly discussing something important, likely issues related to compensation or the promised payments for the services of their comrades who had drowned. As they finally began to prepare to depart, strange sounds from the depths of the jungle reached their ears, unlike any animal calls. Everyone froze, straining their ears to understand what was happening. Suddenly, Richard's voice rang out in a cry. "All aboard, quickly, let's push off," so commanded someone, urging everyone to scramble into the boats and set off. Michael, typically unruffled and unused to being rushed or ordered around, appeared visibly displeased with the situation, but nonetheless joined the others silently in the boats. As soon as the boats pushed off and had barely drifted a few meters, figures appeared on the shore. They wore masks on their faces, their eyes gleaming with an unsettling fire. Unintelligible cries emanated from their lips, filled with something ominous and threatening. The group couldn't make out exactly what they were saying, but their presence evoked an indescribable sense of unease and danger. Richard explained that some tribes have maintained isolation from the outside world for many years, preserving their ancient customs and traditions. He cautioned that some of these tribes might be hostile, and some even adhere to ancient practices of cannibalism. Michael's demeanor had lost its previous enthusiasm. He now regarded the journey with much skepticism and concern. For David, while it amused him somewhat, it also stirred a sense of excitement. He understood they were facing unpredictable and dangerous situations, which added an unparalleled flavor of adventure to the expedition. The third day passed without incident, and they finally arrived at their camping spot. Michael was on edge, reluctant to encounter tribes again, especially after their previous unexpected encounter. His tension created a palpable atmosphere of unease within the group. Richard tried to reassure him, promising they would be cautious and organize a night watch to avoid any unpleasant surprises. David, while feeling some apprehension, still found something captivating in the adventure. He felt the adrenaline of anticipating new discoveries and encounters with the unknown. In the morning, everyone found Michael already preparing. He had risen earlier than the rest of the group, and it was clear from his demeanor that he hadn't slept a wink. Their journey next led them through dense Amazonian forests. They had to leave the boats at the shore, with only 2 locals staying behind to guard the remaining provisions for their return journey. As they pushed deeper into the jungle, the full force of the day began to weigh on them. 3 hours of relentless trekking had taken its toll on every member of the group. Exhaustion was palpable, and they needed to find a suitable place to rest. The group was at the brink of exhaustion. Some of the porters started vomiting, and even the most experienced members of the expedition felt their strength dwindling. David and Richard discussed the situation and decided to stop and divide the provisions among everyone. They calculated that this would help them hold out until reinforcements arrived from the camp. Two of the porters, along with one of the guides, returned to the camp to allow their exhausted bodies to rest. David and Richard stayed with the rest of the group, preparing for a rest stop in these perilous jungles. The sound of footsteps shattered David's peace. Initially, he didn't pay much attention, closing his eyes to continue his sleep. But the silence didn't hold. Instead, cries and shouts broke out, disturbing the tranquility of the morning forest. David instantly jumped to his feet, realizing something terrible was happening. Fear gripped his throat as he saw the tribe closing in on them. Panic spread through the entire group, and every member of the expedition felt fear escalating with each passing second. David's heart raced uncontrollably as he looked at his comrades, collectively realizing they were facing a danger they hadn't anticipated. The tension in the air was palpable as the group, surrounded by the tribespeople, stood in an unusual silence, punctuated only by the cries and shouts of the tribe. Every moment felt endless, and fear overshadowed even the bravest hearts. Richard, maintaining composure amidst this chaotic atmosphere, tried to establish contact with the tribe. He attempted to speak with them but was met with a blow from a stick to his face in response. It became clear that rational dialogue was impossible with these people. They were so driven by their purpose that they saw nothing but obstacles before them. The cries and shouts of the tribe only grew louder, and each moment spent surrounded by them became increasingly menacing. Fear gripped the entire group as two locals attempted to flee. Although it was a poor decision, fear overwhelmed them, prompting reckless action. The tribe reacted as one entity, swift and decisive. Arrows from the tribe quickly pierced the fleeing men, taking their lives deep within the jungle. This act of violence intensified the horror in the hearts of the captives, their future appearing increasingly bleak. As they moved forward slowly, their minds were filled with questions about what awaited them next and whether they could survive. After several hours of marching, the captives beheld something more than they had expected. They reached a charming clearing amidst dense jungle, where sunlight barely penetrated except at twilight. Suddenly, before them stood a small yet elegant structure, filled with mystery and ancient allure. Richard sensed that this place held profound significance. Thoughts of ancient customs and mysterious rituals conducted by tribes here centuries ago flashed through his mind. He wondered how this knowledge could aid them in their current predicament. In the depths of his soul, Richard felt mixed emotions, fear and excitement. This temple was a living witness of ancient times, a repository of knowledge spoken of in legends. Yet, at the same time, he felt uncertainty and unease, as if sensing something dark and powerful lurking behind these majestic walls. Gazing at the temple, Richard couldn't contain his excitement. The captives, sitting in their confinement on the remote edge of the tribal territory, felt isolated from the outside world. The guards, present nearby, kept strict watch over them, offering no chance for escape. Time dragged slowly, with every minute feeling like an eternity. After several hours of waiting, the tribal elder appeared before the captives. Majestic and silent, he commanded respect with his presence. The elder gazed intently at the captives, as if delving into the depths of their souls with his wise eyes, then calmly turned and headed back toward the temple. Some time passed before the elder reappeared. He exchanged words with the guard and then, without uttering another word, disappeared back into the temple, leaving the captives in a state of bewilderment and anticipation. New questions crowded their minds, but the answers remained hidden behind the temple walls and the elder's silence. The captives were brought a small portion of food consisting of various fruits and a strange soup that had an unfamiliar taste and aroma. The mysterious dish seemed entirely foreign and incomprehensible to the travelers. Their stomachs churned at the thought of consuming it. Despite their doubts, they had no choice. The guards made it clear that they must eat all the food provided, and they were resolute in their insistence. Following orders, the captives cautiously began to taste the strange soup and unusual fruits, trying to overcome their aversion and finish their meal. They had to trust and rely on the will of their guardians, even though they didn't know what was concealed within this food. As the captives sat there, the hallucinogenic substances began to affect their consciousness. At first, they felt a slight tingling sensation throughout their bodies, and then their perceptions began to blur, creating a sense of unreality and unpredictability about the world around them. The masks and cries of those around them merged into a strange mosaic landscape where reality blended with fantasies. They felt animal forms and images appearing before their mental eyes, each time taking on different shapes and colors. The animals seemed enormous, distorted, and incomprehensible, their outlines blurring and distorting under the influence of hallucinations. While the captives tried to orient themselves in this world of illusions, the hallucinations only intensified, engulfing them in a whirlpool of unfamiliar and unreal images. It was a moment where reality and fantasy merged together, creating a world where the boundaries between dream and reality became increasingly blurred and indefinite. Under the influence of hallucinogens, the elder appeared as a mystical creature, akin to an animal or a bird ready to take flight into the heavens. His words sounded like echoes of mysterious whispers of nature, which only partially reached the consciousness of the captives. Like those stunned by astonishment and fear, they were slowly ushered one by one into the temple, as if under the sway of unknown forces drawing them into a mysterious ritualistic act. A mystical atmosphere surrounded them, making the captives feel like a part of something greater and incomprehensible. In their consciousness remained only a veil of incomprehension and vague premonitions, their minds shrouded in the mist of unknown mystical forces that intertwined around them like invisible threads leading them into the depths of ancient secrets. David's awareness plunged into the abyss of uncertainty, as if his mind was engulfed in dense fog, obscuring all thoughts and sensations. He felt his strength leaving him and reality dissolved in flickering rays of light, as if opening a path to unexplored realms of consciousness. As they led him into the temple, David only fleetingly noticed his surroundings, the place where they laid him down, and the flickering light penetrating through the dense curtains of his thoughts. Unknown forces floated around him, as if beckoning him to immerse himself in the world of mysteries and enigmas. Thus, in the final moments of his journey, David felt himself becoming a part of something much larger and more mysterious than he could have imagined. Reality and hallucinations merged in his consciousness, and he immersed himself in the world of secrets and mystical forces that permeated the ancient temple, like invisible threads leading him into the unknown. The events surrounding the disappearance of the group will undoubtedly stir confusion and anxiety within society. Newspapers and news reports will begin to feature various versions of the incident, each one more chilling and mysterious than the last. One version, delving into the realms of fantasy and mysticism, will suggest that the explorers discovered a gateway to a parallel world and chose to remain there forever, entranced by its mysteries and enigmas. Others will claim that the group was attacked by wild tribes. During this time, the families and loved ones of the missing will live in uncertainty and distress, hoping for a miracle and praying for their safe return. Everyone will find their own explanation for these events, their own version of the truth, but the true nature of what happened will remain a mystery, shrouded in the veil of secrets and the unknown,